Hello and welcome to Frontline Conversations. In Frontline Conversations, we go beyond the headlines. And in this program, we have a special guest who is an academic by temperament, a professor by vocation, a dissenter by compulsion, and also an activist by choice. But he's also a distinguished professor of international relations and has been formerly the Vice Chancellor of Islamic University in Science and Technology, and also historian and expert on Tibet and Ladakh affairs. He is Dr. Professor Siddiq Wahid. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Siddiq Wahid, Ladakh at the present moment is facing a crisis of sorts. And everybody is reporting on Ladakh, but you know that Ladakh is not a simplistic issue. It involves a lot of complexities and has a lot of nuance. So could you explain to our viewers, apart from the anxieties and demands about protecting Ladakh's unique identity and the inclusion in the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution, or restoration of statehood and securing jobs through a public service commission, what is happening in Ladakh?
I think what is happening on the broader scale is two things. Is that I think Ladakh's demonstrated loyalty to India over a period of 75 years, ever since independence, is being tried, number one. I think that it is being tried because they have been protesting. As we know, there were protests that they didn't want to be within the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And then after that, they sought some sort of secession from Jammu and Kashmir. Many adjustments were made within Jammu and Kashmir in order to accommodate them. Some of them were satisfactory, others were not. And besides that, Ladakh itself is a very complex place. One of my sort of, political hypotheses is that the smaller the region and population, the more complex it gets. So I think that it's a period when Ladakh is being tried from all perspectives, number one. It is also testing Ladakh's patience from the point of view of promises made and what they're going to do about what Delhi is going to do about it and things. And it's really causing Ladakh to introspect as to what it means, to be in India, not as a challenge to being in India, but what it means to be in India in the current environment.
The relationship.
The relationships between it and New Delhi, because now it is a union territory, which by definition means it is controlled from Delhi.
So when we read a lot of stuff on Ladakh, usually people write about it's a Buddhist population, but you are from the place, and there are Buddhists and there are Shia Muslims, there are Sunni Muslims, and there are also Christians, which you also write about in one of your pieces. And I was going through some of your pieces, and the sort of contention was unity is important for the Ladakhis across the ideological divide, and second is resisting fragmentation.
Correct.
So how are you seeing, right, with respect to these four demands that are being made vociferously? Do you see that unity happening? And
well, ironically, is that the lack of delivery on the promises that I spoke about just now has resulted in Ladakh unifying. The largest divisive element was between Kargil and Leh. And then also to a certain extent between Muslims and Buddhists. I think that those was it. And that now has sort of been erased, and it didn't happen yesterday. It happened in 2021 and in August of 2021. And it happened because I think both Leh and Kargil, as well as Buddhists and Muslims, realized that this culture, which is represented basically by 300,000 people, and that's it, was truly endangered. And since then they have united, and I dare say that it is precisely after the 21st of the what do you call 2021 August, that it has been a headache for uh, Delhi as to how to deal with Ladakhis. Because, as we know, I mean, a large part of the BJP strategy is to sort of find fault lines and then either aggravate it or
exploit them.
Exploit it or aggravate it in any way, as it goes along. And it has tried that even after August 2021 to do that in Ladakh, and it has failed. A brilliant example of it is a problem that had cropped up, or a controversy that had cropped up about a sort of land that had been given for building a gompa or a monastery or a temple in Kargil town in 1969. I mean, basically, was resolved between the Buddhists and the Muslims in Kargil by themselves, without any interference, from Delhi. So I think that that has happened, and it is, from my own perspective, this is the thing that I harp on the most, is that the unity has to remain. And the other thing that you said is that there is diversity in Ladakh. And,
geographical diversity.
Well, there's geographic diversity. There is, internal sort of Ladakhi.
Religious diversity.
Yes, religious diversity. There is linguistic diversity. There are all kinds of it. So Ladakh is not by any stretch homogeneous. And but this opposition from Delhi, shall we say, has caused unity. And I think that that's something that is often ignored, by people.
So let me say that, apart from you being an academic by profession or activist by choice, I also see you as a fortune teller, because when I read your pieces, that you wrote during last 4 years, 3-4 years, you had sort of predicted this situation, that
Yes.
it could come to this pass.
Yeah.
But do you really think, like, we normally don't ascribe violence to Ladakh, but now there have been killings. 4 people have lost their lives. There are about 90 are injured, some of them with pellets and bullets. So this is sort of unprecedented. How do you see this kind of an escalation?
Well, I really don't know. Escalation is one thing because it happens in the heat of the moment. And I think by all sort of reports that have come in, it happened in the heat of the moment. People were unhappy. And there was also a sort of like suspicion starting to build up, because over the last month and a half to 2 months, there was a steady troop build up. And many Ladakhis have told me that it was, and I witnessed it actually, because in the last month and a half I've been there twice, and I noticed some sort of an increase in CRPF deployment in Ladakh, and this was starting to build suspicion, and I think that it led to a peak on August 17th, and as a result of which, I think this whole tragic sort of deaths and injuries happened. I I really don't know what to say. What I do know is that the New Delhi seems to have underestimated Ladakh's resolve in sort of wanting to have an answer to their four demands. And I think the anger is triggered by the fact that they've been taken for granted. And people are saying, we've been peacefully protesting for 4 steady years.
And this also, this hunger strike or
Yes.
protest sit-in,
Yes.
it has been largely very peaceful. Not
Correct.
largely, but it has been
All
absolutely
through.
peaceful.
Absolutely,
And
completely.
these conversations that have taken place, or the
Yes.
negotiations or talks that took place between Delhi and the people in Ladakh, there has been this, the KDA, the
Yeah.
Kargil Democratic Alliance, or the apex body from Leh. So, do you see any headway after this escalation? Because now the government is saying that there is a possibility of a foreign hand. How Sonam Wangchuk has been arrested under,
Right.
stringent NSA, and his NGO,
Yes.
the FCRA has been cancelled. The
Yes,
registration has
right,
been cancelled, and now he is in jail. So, do you see this movement for Ladakh's protection of rights and identity and other demands as well? Do you see them now being a leaderless kind of a movement, or do you see there are other leaders waiting in the wings?
See, one of the things that is also being demonstrated by this recent flare-up is that where there was a fault line between religions and regions, there may now be a fault line generationally. Thus far, I know for a fact that it's been the elderly and aging leadership that has tried to keep the lid on, on this,
Keep things calm.
on the pressures, to calm people down, to calm the youth down, and so forth. I think that we may be also witnessing some sort of a generational shift, and so it could be that there is a younger set of leaders that are coming out. Now, the younger set of leaders, by younger, I mean, from my point of view, everybody's young now, and so forth. But by the younger set of leaders, I mean anybody from about 45 onwards, because they will have a longer political life, obviously, in this environment. And so, therefore, that's a very sort of, dicey, shall we say, age group to be politically activist. Dangerous, I say, because when you're young, you are much more prone to being emotional and things,
or idealistic as well.
or idealistic in terms of what can be attained, and very impatient in terms of not attaining them. And so, as a result, I don't know. I hope rather that it does not transform itself into some sort of a sort of like more violent sort of thing. And by violence, I don't mean guns, but what I mean is more confrontational, agitational, and because that then spells a danger. It spells a danger because the demographics are such that a lot of Ladakhis are sort of ex-servicemen in the army and so forth. They're trained.
Scouts.
In the Ladakh Scouts or other, regiments of the Indian Army. And they're trained, so they can withstand, state violence also, and in the group of 4 that were just killed, one of them was 46.
Yes.
And he was an ex-serviceman, if I read correctly. So there's another, sort of group that you might inflame. And that's my worry. I mean,
so let's come to another issue, which is now you have seen. Sonam Wangchuk was the one who actually tweeted when August 2019 abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A happened, and Jammu and Kashmir lost its semi-autonomy and statehood and special status. So there was a long pending demand from the Ladakhis for over a period of time that they wanted a UT status at the time, or to be controlled, federally administered. And then after 1 year, within 2 years, they realized that perhaps this was not the solution. So now there has been a lot of politicians, unionist politicians from the Kashmir Valley, some of them taking a dig at the Ladakhis, especially Sonam Wangchuk and others who have been vociferous in their demand for the UT status. How do you see that, the timing of this taking a dig at Ladakh at this critical juncture?
Yeah, I mean, it's people change their views. I mean, in politics, whether it is, self-interest, whether it is changed conditions, whether it is shifting geopolitics, I don't know. I mean, we don't know as a whole. I know until we really study it carefully and so forth. So I think that, clearly there has been an about face on the part of Sonam Wangchuk and things. But those are, those are less, I tend to less criticize those things and say, try and offer constructive criticism to see where do we go next, and how do we sort of resolve
rather than
this developing
points.
impasse. Because to do that is to just be argumentative, for argument's sake, number one. I mean, as far as individuals go, they have to answer to themselves most of all, and not to an entire crowd. I mean, yes, if you're a politician and you're elected and the people have vested interest in you, interest in you, then, you have to answer to them. But here we're talking about an activist, who has changed his stance. Maybe he feels betrayed. One has to sort of actually speak to him, which I haven't done in a long time, and especially to ask these questions in order to know what is the rationale for it.
So there is no doubt a growing discontent in Ladakh. You spoke like what it could lead to regional on the regional front, but since you are also an expert on international relations and governance, so what could be the geopolitical implications of this crisis?
Well, I mean, what it can be in the future, difficult to predict, quite frankly, for me. I think that, but we can sort of, contemplate as to, the present situation. And the present situation is something where we have to accept that South Asia has become China's backyard, and when it comes to talk about China, then Ladakh is on the forefront for obvious reasons. And Ladakhis have fought wars against China.
More recently, in 2020, there was a clash at the Galwan Valley,
of course,
where 20 soldiers of Indian Army were lost their lives.
So that is something very much, in play now. I think it was in play soon after August 5th, 2019.
When Beijing issued a statement.
When Beijing itself issued a statement, I think on the 6th, saying that we are now involved in the J&K dispute, or words to that effect. So I think that is very much lingering, But I tend to talk less about the geopolitics. I mean, in a situation like this, for example, because the Ladakhi demands are very reasonable.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, it's just mind-boggling as to why it has not been
to protect
responded
jobs,
to
protect identity.
And let's not forget, and let's underline the fact that we're talking about 300,000 souls. I mean, what is that? It's not even half the population of Defense Colony in Delhi. So what does it take to make them feel
alienated,
or to feel a part of the family? I mean, it obviously takes, huge incompetence to make them feel alienated, but to make, but to make them feel part of a family, if you're looking at it as such, it's fairly simple, one would think, when you look at the demands.
So you also say that in terms of
And excuse me for interrupting you.
Please.
The other thing is that there are 4 demands. You can prioritize them, and if I were to prioritize them, I'd say jobs is number 1. And we're talking about now 30-40% of the population, of Ladakh when you talk about youth, So it takes that 30-40% to feel comfortable, not with gifts. That's not what Ladakhis are asking for, not with handouts. That's not what they're asking for, but actually being able to operate in an open world, open in the sense of, because of the digital world, because of, borders.
You are connected to the wider world.
You're
anyway.
connected,
So when you talk about, for example, the Muslims of Ladakh or the Christians of Ladakh, you argue that that in Ladakh's intellectual and economic life, they have sort of punched above their weight. Could you just please...
Above their weight?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think when I was talking about that, I was talking primarily about the Christians, because the Christians are a tiny minority, and they've punched above their weight because their engagement with the modern world preceded that of Muslims of Ladakh and the Buddhists of Ladakh by almost a century, in the sense that they were sort of introduced to modernity when they converted to Christianity. It was through Europeans and so forth that Christianity came to Ladakh. And, so I think that that's the reference that I was making in that particular article. And that has to be appreciated, first of all, by Ladakhis ourselves, but also by sort of Delhi and the rest of South Asia as a whole. I mean,
so let's come to the last 2 questions. One is, when it comes to the power center, whether it is in politics, administration, bureaucracy, what is the sentiment in Ladakh that who are the people who are controlling these levers of power?
In Ladakh itself?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there too, you'll find, I think, diffusion in Ladakh. I remember in 2012 and 13, both those years, I don't know which year it was, that I went and talked to some people right on the border in Changtang, and one of the first comments that they made is that people in Leh don't understand us at all. I mean, that's like the same community, right? I mean, culturally, linguistically, etc. And what they were saying, what the person was responding to, is that they shout at us in Leh for coming away from the borders, like from Demchok and Chushul and these other places, and the answer, their response to it is very simple, is that we don't like to get beaten up by the Chinese. I mean, it's as simple as that, So if you give us something to respond to that, it's a thing. So I think...
I was referring to actually the top positions that are currently occupied by people in terms of bureaucracy or administration, or well, you mean in the present administrative setup under UT Ladakh? Well, I mean, I think that the immediate response is that they don't know Ladakh, and it's very true, because I don't think that there are many Ladakhis in key positions, and so it's natural that they would not know. Listen, look at it another way. Ladakh is used to be, both Kargil and Leh put together, the largest district by far in all of India. Suddenly, you have, and it was the largest district with only 1% of the land arable, and for a population of 300,000. So it may not seem like that there's a huge disconnect there, but there is. When you have such so little arable land, and how to till the land, what it means, to have water on time,
And what does it mean to be left alone to traditionally
Irrigate.
sort of irrigate the thing in the traditional style has huge meaning for Ladakh, because if they miss the opportunity, then their crops are bad, at that thing. Or if they're not allowed to graze where they usually graze, which has also happened, in the peripheral parts of Ladakh, then it also destroys their thing. So that then ends up building intra-Ladakh problems, and certainly between the bureaucracy in Ladakh, which is what it is now. It's not elected individuals. So who do they answer to? Do the people don't even know the language?
There is this fear or anxiety that they perhaps do not understand the sensibilities and sensitivities involved as far as the issue.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a classic, case. When you're ruled from the center directly, how much would they know about the periphery? And even to the extent of where Ladakhis have criticized and said that the location, there used to be, when I went and in 2012 and 13, there was it said PP1, PP2, PP3. I said, what's this PP? And they were saying patrol point 1. So even the geography becomes military, whereas those places have traditional Ladakhi names. Why don't you use them? Maybe it will make Ladakhis feel like they have been owned, by the people who rule them. And that hasn't happened. So I think that's a long story. I mean, it is, India is obviously, like any other country, concerned about its borders, but, the border is not only to keep the people out, it's also to keep your own people in. It's a simple, and can you, visualize what that means?
So you like it's the last question, but I'm connecting the dots. You also wrote once that what is happening in Ladakh currently, Delhi must worry. So what is the path ahead from the Delhi's perspective, and from the Ladakh's current protest movement?
I think from Delhi's perspective, the worry is that you don't want to mess with a border that is, a border peoples who actually live on the boundary line,
LAC.
And the LOC, because at one point it is the, so there is that constant worry. There should be, at least on the part of thing that of Delhi, is that there is that worry, and it's a national security issue, not a Ladakh specific issue, but you should worry because you cannot afford the people who live in that to start distrusting you. Simple. And so therefore I don't know what the implications of that would be, but it is still to be seen as to what the implications could be. For Ladakhis, the worry is twofold. One is to continue to keep the unity for the 300,000 population that you have at any cost.
Resist attempts and fragmentation?
Correct. Well, attempts at fragmentation, attempts at, exacerbating, fault lines, whether it be religious, whether it be regional, whether now it be even generational, as to, how it is going to be. So to keep that unity together, to not have too many disagreements amongst us. I mean, disagreements are invariable,
but to reach a common,
but to have have unity, even if we don't agree completely,
on
to
broader issues,
everything else. The other thing is to keep it peaceful, because
that's a very important
for
point.
4 Ladakhis to be killed in a single day with a single firing, is like having 40 in Kashmir. I mean, proportionately, it may be even more,
in terms of
to be killed
ratio.
in Kashmir. from a ratio point of view. So I think that is not something that Ladakh can afford, and I think that needs to be taken. It's a very difficult conundrum.
So before we end this conversation, one word for how you look at the accusations against Sonam Wangchuk.
I really don't know what to say. It's not a laughing matter because
People
he's
have
an
lost their
individual
lives.
who has, sort of risked a lot in order to speak out and have a voice. But essentially, it's silly. I mean, not very long ago, he was a very strong supporter of the BJP.
Yes.
What is it that turned them so against him? I really fail to understand. I mean, in those days, of course, I disagreed with what he was doing and what he was saying. Not that I either wrote about it or even spoke to him about it, because, it's an individual and individuals have their rights and so forth. I thought if I ever get to meet him, which I did, but in a totally different context, so it was not going to be, okay, let's discuss your political views. I didn't do that because I'm not that sort of person. But I did meet him and we didn't get to engage, but an individual is an individual, and he was acting very much like as an individual. I don't think he belongs to any party, and things. Even he's not even a part of Apex, who called the hunger strike, for example, and who called for the new set of demonstration. I mean, he just participated in them as a citizen. So I think it's rather, silly. As for the accusations of foreign hand, financial, what do you think? What happened to it? When he was a part of you, is the question that I would have. So it seems like an excuse, and I don't think even the FCRA case, I think, has been pulled back or something. I don't know. Maybe I misheard that one, but it's to be seen. But it is silly. I hope he is safe. I hope he's
He's been taken to Jodhpur for now.
Oh, has it been Jodhpur? I didn't know. I see. Okay. All right.
So I think on this note, we end this conversation. Professor Siddiq Wahid has made some strong points and some recommendations also for the Ladakhi people, for the new generation leadership there, and also for Delhi, why Delhi must worry. And there's no doubt that there is growing discontent in Ladakh. Let's hope that those who matter take note of what has been said. Thank you very much for watching.